Usually when we start Microsoft Project, we'll take the option that's highlighted here on the New page. We'll open a blank project and start keying in our task descriptions, durations, and so on, as you would starting an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document. However, apart from opening a blank project, there are a couple other options here. Obviously, there are all the templates you can see around this page, which are being dynamically picked up by the system linking to Microsoft.com and showing us various templates on the Office template area of Microsoft.com. However, we can also open an existing project, something that's been used in our organization before, and save it with a new name. Rather than just having to open the file and save as, we can automate this process partially by clicking the second option here on the page. However, there's also a third one which illustrates what I'd like to show you. Microsoft does have a very basic import functionality. Regrettably, there's no button to start it off, but by pressing this particular option, New from Excel Workbook, it is possible to open a file and dynamically control what comes in. Let's take a look. In this particular case, I prepared for you a simple Excel spreadsheet. As you can see here on this spreadsheet, I've got a list of 5 tasks. Got one column showing a task name and a second column showing the duration, and these numbers are presented as they might have been typed in following a brainstorming session. You can notice that some of the words say day and some say days. That doesn't matter. I could have just left the letter D. Would be sufficient for Microsoft Project to work out that these are durations given in days. But let's go back to Microsoft Project and see how this works. Here in Project, I'll click on the third option on that top row, New from Excel Workbook. First, it is a bit confusing. It does prompt me to find the file, and in this case, I have opened a folder containing a sample file, but unfortunately it's invisible at the moment. And that's because the default format, rather strangely, says XML format. Although the button says import from an Excel spreadsheet, Microsoft, for some strange reason, seems to default to this one. And so you actually have to click on the pull down here, go down to the fourth option, which reads Excel Workbook, select that before my rather simple Excel file is visible, holidayplantasks.xlsx. However, once we overcome that limitation and click on it, we can open it. And then we go into a Microsoft wizard. Now this wizard has a number of predefined steps. They're quite simple, but there are one or two traps. Personally, I find copying and pasting much more efficient than using this wizard. But for the sake of demonstration, let's go through the process, see what happens. First, I'll click Next. Then we have a window showing 2 options, a new map or use existing map. A map is Microsoft's jargon for a predefined format where certain content will be expected in certain columns laid out containing dates, times, or whatever. Rather than looking at the existing maps, which are fairly limited and mainly used for export rather than import, let's just go ahead and select New Map. So I'll press the Next button. There are further options here. There are 3 main ones. Open a blank file and import all the Excel into this new file. We could add all the tasks in the Excel file to the bottom of an existing sheet, assuming it was open. And the third option, assuming we had positioned our cursor somewhere halfway in that existing Microsoft project file, we could merge the new tasks so that a number of new blank rows are created and the new content inserted in those blank rows, spacing out the original text into 2 halves. Rather than demonstrate all these combinations, let's just take the first option and import it as a brand new project. Clicking Next, we haven't finished with the options yet. In our example, we only have tasks, so tasks and duration. So I need to tick this first option. And please note down here on the second half of the window, it says by default, import includes headers. Now, as a rule, I do suggest you leave headers in your spreadsheet because it certainly helps you match relevant information to the corresponding Microsoft columns, Microsoft Project columns. Microsoft Project does use slightly different terminology to what we might expect. There are more complicated headings like start dates and finish dates and so on. So it's a good idea to describe what you've got so there's no ambiguity and no confusion. Please note that if we also had resources to import, or instead we only wanted to import resources, we could tick the second option, resources, or we could have both tasks and resources checked. In this case, I'm just going to stick with the first option, but if we had more than one selected, it would go through first the task selection, then the resources, and then if we had gone further with people assigned to particular jobs, we could have had then the third stage of importing the assignments. Without going any further, let's just press the next button. And here we actually start dealing with the real thing. At the top here, the source worksheet name that Microsoft has highlighted with this orange color. We have a pull-down menu, and let me click on that disclosure pull-down, and we can see 3 sheets. Most Excel spreadsheets by default have 3 separate sheets, and sheet 1 is the one that usually contains the data, and in fact that is what I've done with this sample file, so let me select that. We suddenly see 2 of the headings showing, task name and duration. The second column here is trying to actually relate this information to existing Microsoft data. Duration is no trouble. You can see it corresponds to the word duration, which is a Microsoft heading containing elapsed time. But the first one, it doesn't really recognize the expression task name, although as we know, using Microsoft Project, we have a column that just says name. Well, task name isn't exactly the term that Microsoft uses internally. We need to click this red highlight, not mapped, and suddenly Microsoft will give us a pull down here, and we will see the approximately 200 different data items contained in the database. Task name is in the database, but it's not called task name, it's called name. So if I simply press the letter N, we see the very first thing that comes up is name, which is roughly about halfway along the list. If I click that, we'll suddenly see in the bottom half of the window a preview of the actual content here. Task name contains words like plan next holiday, choose sites to see. It's not all showing there, but it is in my Excel spreadsheet. And the duration makes sense, so it's showing you the Excel inputs and the project outputs. And in this trial and error approach, we can actually put together the mapping of what content we want to go into which columns. Let's click next, see what happens. It gives me now the option to save this mapping so that in future, if I have a similar spreadsheet, I can actually retrieve it, and the system will know how to map the column to a column called task name to the name column. But I don't particularly want to do that. It's so trivial. As long as you know these strange quirks of Microsoft, it's fairly easy to locate the right column of information. Let's click Finish, and then the system will carry out the import. And as you can see here, we now have a list of tasks successfully imported. In this case, it's got today's date, Valentine's Day 2017, and we are ready to go.